Good morning, colleagues. Welcome to these presentations which is part of the process for the selection of the dean, or the new dean for the Faculty of Science. It's been a fairly long process, and I do want to apologize up front to the candidates, because this process started early in the year, and because of different considerations, we were not able to conclude it a bit earlier than now, but nonetheless we are here now, and we hope that by the end of today we will have a recommendation which we can make to the various substructures of universities, which is Senate, the Institutional Forum, as well as Council, and by the next Council meeting hopefully have some outcome in terms of who the candidate would be that would take the Faculty of Science forward. Now we have 4 candidates that will do presentations today. Our first candidate is Professor Barend Erasmus, which I will introduce in a minute or so. I just have 1 or 2 announcements that I would like to make. Firstly, we have academic staff, professional and administrative staff, as well as students here in the audience, I presume. And post the 4 presentations that we will have today, I would like to urge you not to run away, because we need some feedback from you. And we have breakaway sessions, and I'll announce now where you must go immediately after the 4th presentation. Academic staff, we have Professor Stephen Jurish that will hear your feedback in room SH3123, and I will announce it again at the end. So 3123, I think it's the electoral on top of this one, if I'm not mistaken. For professional and support, it's SH3120, and Ms. Casey Sparks will in fact take the feedback from the professional administrative staff. And then for the students, the facilitator there is Ms. Tanita Rambura. I hope I pronounced that correctly. That's at the back there. And the students will assemble in SHBC, I think it's downstairs. Now, the feedback from those 3 groups will be presented to the selection committee. In other words, whatever feedback you have given as the 3 groups about the candidates will in fact be presented to the selection committee. If there are questions which you particularly wish to ask, or wish for the committee to ask the candidates, you are welcome to also put that forward at that time. If those questions obviously don't come up in the normal presentations, which we will have in a minute or so. So we are due to start at 15:15. I'm going to be draconian about the time, Baron. So I suggest that we start now. Candidates have 20 minutes to present, and there will be a 15-minute period for questions. So what I'll do at the end of the presentation, I will take round-up questions. I will ask the candidate to ask these questions, to answer these questions, and then if there's time, if time allows, I will take another round of questions. I would like to just ask that we all respect the dignity of the process and not become personal in terms of our questioning any of the candidates. This is a process where I think the candidates are turned upside down, inside out. They're placed in a glass house, and they are being viewed from all angles. So please also respect their dignity. So that is an appeal from me, because we did have instances in the past where some of the questions were of a highly personal nature. So without further ado, let me then introduce Professor Barend Erasmus. Barend is currently the director of the Global Change Institute. This institute has been in existence since 2013, but Barend has been the director since 2014. He's also the Exaro Chair of the Global Change and Sustainability Institute since 2014. You've seen his CV, so I would just say that he does have a PhD. He completed it in 2004 at the University of Pretoria. So welcome, Barend, and please come to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Crouch. Thank you for this opportunity. So I take my CV and my statement of intent as read. I'd be happy to take any of the questions afterwards. I'll try to be brief, and I'll try to be to the point. My slides in my presentation provide some high-level guidance. Throughout my narrative, I try to balance the notion of big picture vision with actionable, specific activities. It won't be comprehensive for either vision or activities, partly because I've only got 20 minutes, but mostly because my current view of the wide array of activities in the Faculty of Science is determined by my previous interest at the Global Change Institute. As a new dean, I look forward to change this status quo for your ideas on big picture vision and suggestions for action. I describe my management style as inclusive and consultative, and my QQR review from yesterday confirms this, that it is effective, not just for institutional indicators, but it is also effective in creating a team of people working towards a shared vision. This management style does not mean that I will always agree with you, or that in all cases I would be able to agree to your request, but I can undertake to listen, with the understanding that if you don't agree with the outcomes, that we'll have a mutual understanding of why that is the case. This social contract comes with caveats. You need to do the same when interacting with your colleagues and students. In practice, that means no emails with exclamation marks and capital letters. In return, I will do my best to represent the collective school opinions to senior management. I think these principles align well with the sentiments expressed at the recent series of interviews for some of the recently appointed heads of schools. Many of these incumbents and appointments expressed a need for better collegiality at WITS. I think what I've just proposed, these principles, feeds well into those needs expressed by the incoming heads of schools. I think the Faculty of Science already has a substantial record in being nationally responsive and world class. I don't think we've got any foundation that we need to build. I think we've got a few cracks to patch, and I think we've got a few things that we can do better. We've just had the National Science Week, lots of learners on campus talking about science activities. In 2018, this faculty produced almost a third of all the PhDs at WITS, and I'm not going to try and summarize the multitude of international accolades that this faculty has already and continues to accrue. In my statement of intent, I refer to 4 broad areas that I'm interested to zoom into for this presentation. The first one is what I call work in the gaps, and I use the word work as a noun and a verb. The challenges facing South Africa and the world need holistic systems thinkers, we know that. These people need to cope with different worldviews and different knowledge systems, and some of these knowledge systems can be quite strange to academia. In turn, these systems thinkers need deep scholarship in the traditional disciplines to provide the gaps within which to build the bridges. I do not see cross-cutting research as something that happens at the expense of deep scholarship. On the contrary, I see it as an additional tool that we have when we respond to complex problems. In the end, broad, interdisciplinary capability is an emergent property of the collective and not seated in individuals. This takes some time and humility, and I think this disciplinary humility and the ability to say, I do not know, please explain, fits well with the previous aspirations of improving collegiality at this institution. This starts from a very high base when it comes to interdisciplinary work. There's a number of existing and very mature initiatives. I'd like to use a few examples, again, from my own experience, and I'm looking forward to hear more from yours, should I be the new dean. Global circulation models are mathematical descriptions of land, ocean, atmosphere, thermodynamics. The outputs of these models have had profound, long-lasting national and international policy implications and responses. It did not do so because it was mathematics behind it, or atmospheric chemistry, atmospheric physics. It was able to do so because of the wide variety of interdisciplinary scientists, and I'm not going to try and mention them, but this spans all disciplines from social science, the humanities, commerce, law, management, the medical sciences, as well as the natural sciences. So that was the reason, and that interdisciplinary capability existed because of those groups of people coming together. Here at WITS, the use of artificial intelligence and big data as an emerging focus area presents large opportunities to combine with global circulation models. Internationally, this is not a large area of focus, but recognized as a challenging, difficult, but potentially very rewarding area of research. And WITS is ideally positioned to respond to that. Another example of the excellent interdisciplinary work already being done at WITS is the WITS Rural Knowledge Hub, capitalizing on a long-term data set on public health, and already we've got a large number of environmental scientists, demographers, statisticians, public health officials, and health science scientists utilizing the data set to confront, solve, and deal with some of the challenges in South Africa in the century. There are many such examples at WITS, and the fact that I mentioned these that I'm familiar with does not preclude any of the other excellent work that is happening. Cross-cutting work, cross-cutting research will accelerate WITS's impact in response to national priorities, whether these priorities are expressed in the National Development Plan or the Integrated Resource Plan. In addition, when we do this in Africa, and we do this with our African networks, such as ARUA and others, we become the preferred partners for the rest of the world to work on the continent. The reasons to work on the continent is not ideological, they might be, but that's not the reason I put forward here. The reason is that the African continent is rapidly going towards 3 billion people, increasing education, westernizing society, modernizing society is probably a better term, as well as vast natural resources. And the rest of the world would like to cash in on this. And we are ideally prepared to be the gateway. Comes with some responsibility that we don't redo some of the wrongs of the previous rulers of this continent. So how do we start working in the gaps? First of all, apologies. We need to start and recognize and build existing interdisciplinary growth areas. Not all our interdisciplinary work is equally mature, and there's no point in reaching for an international cutting-edge area for which we haven't done the homework on some of the bases. We do need to bring people with right interests together, and this happens over coffee, whatever you do on a Friday afternoon. It sounds simple, but it works. We need to provide incentives to work in these gaps. Some of these incentives might be financial, some of them might be personal, some of them might be related to academic fulfillment, but they will vary for all different academics. And it would be my job, talking to you, to understand what these incentives are and do my utmost to put as many of them in place as I can. We can participate in research consortia, but remember, because we're a preferred destination, we easily end up as the African partner tick box. Be aware of it and make sure that your interests are adequately catered for when you work. And we do know about postdocs and visiting scientists or visiting sabbatical professors as a mechanism of stimulating some of this work. Moving on to the next large area of interest. I call this looking over the fence. More and more companies, as well as civil society, would like to partner with academia. We need to look for companies with a beyond compliance focus. And we would like to have programmatic relationships as opposed to short-term consultancies. Don't preclude the latter, but I think the former is closer aligned to the academic project at WITS. We need to think carefully about the value proposition when we start looking over the fence. We need to have a clear idea of what we offer and what we would like to have in return. To really unlock this, we need to develop new models of collaboration with a much wider variety of stakeholders. This in itself is an interesting and emerging science. It takes some time to develop these models and even failures, but in the end, you have processes and platforms that can be utilized for a number of different research initiatives. Looking over the fence not only has the short-term benefits of funding, but it also has the benefit of understanding our market, so to speak. Where do our skilled students go once they graduate? And again, we need to be cognizant of short-term needs without sacrificing the long-term strategic vision that universities are supposed to provide with this sort of manpower. How do we do this? Teamwork. External funding requires excellence from researchers and professional staff to work together in ways that might be strange, new, but I can assure you quite rewarding. It doesn't work with one without the other. We need to up our game when it comes to project management. Luckily, there's a large number, growing number, of research entities in this university with exceptionally skilled research managers that have grown into senior roles much more than traditional administrative staff would have done. We do have ways of capitalizing on this knowledge, but we can do better. And if we do better there, we manage the more money that we bring in, the better, and that, I think, is good for most of us. Discover your inner salesperson, or at least know someone who does. I've sat in many bilateral agreements or bilateral engagements where I see the principal of the visiting party doodling. I see them Googling to find out who is this person giving me a third-year lecture. Know who you speak to. Again, it sounds trivial, but in the long run, if you do this well, you don't dilute the WITS brand, you strengthen your own professionality, and in the end, that translates into opportunity. Work in the gaps, but know where your expertise ends. On many of these platforms, professors are considered professors of life, the universe, and everything. I've made that mistake in climate change debates, where I get questions asked about the technicalities of renewable energy. That is not my area of expertise, and I have paid the price for it. I've learned the hard way, don't make those same mistakes. The third area, balancing act, working smarter and harder, smarter versus harder. This is not new. Our operating environment has become more complex and demanding. And that's really a tricky thing, because our profession, more than most, requires quiet thought, reflection, and scholarship. You don't microwave that. You don't just add water and it happens. It takes time. At the GCI, we've made good progress in lowering what I call operational friction. Some of the solutions lie in people doing things differently. Some of the solutions lie in tweaking some processes. And some of the solutions do lie in rather large structural changes. Some of these structural changes will probably only happen with the next D, not in this particular term. But it's about understanding what those are, and it's about understanding what needs to be done to change it if required. One of the first things I'll do is to consult widely and understand in each of your particular contexts, whether it's professional staff, academic staff, or students, where there's opportunities for being more efficient. Whether this is lab staff participating as teaching assistants, or just running better funding applications. And before you put up your hand, the feedback from a recent FRC medium-term finance shows that the Faculty of Science did not perform as well in our applications purely because we can't read the instructions. Right? So this is not about better applications and more highfalutin science. This is about provider supporting documentation, and in this case, better than our colleagues in the medical faculty, sorry Martin, since they took us to the poll with more awards. There's actually already been some other efforts or some other initiatives where these efficiencies are self-emerging. There's a large number of schools and faculties offering writing workshops. And this is consistent with the idea of we've got this crazy life, let's block out time, focus, and execute. And that's actually something called sprint technology or sprint methodology from the business sciences, which we've kind of self-discovered, and we could have discovered that a bit longer ago with better cross-disciplinary initiatives. We can be more efficient, as I've just mentioned. When non-traditional sources of funding come your way, there's a risk that the tail can wag the dog. These companies are used to dealing with consultants, and you're not a consultant, you're an academic. And that means that you bring a different perspective and a different value proposition which you need to make to these funders. There are also dangers of working in the gap, especially for young scholars. We can easily end up without the appropriate world epistemological agility. So on the x-axis, on your left-hand side, would be people that are not confident, researchers that aren't confident, dealing with different worldviews and knowledge systems. On the right-hand side, those that are. Call that epistemological agility. I'm not distinguishing between working and operating and embedding yourself. For now, just a knowledge of these different epistemologies would be sufficient. On the y-axis is the degree of expertise in any particular method, in a particular discipline. You need to be methodologically grounded. The top right-hand side is where we want to train our young scholars to be. The challenge is that most of the interdisciplinary researchers that we have got a disciplinary history, and somewhere along the line started branching out. If we start teaching our postgraduates interdisciplinary work too early, they run the risk of ending up in conceptual la-la land. Speaking of young scientists, coming to the fourth area in my statement of intent, I think that there are structural impediments, new ones, that most of the professors in this room did not have when we developed our careers. And these impediments keep young scientists from fulfilling their career goals, and it keeps students from being successful. I think we've made quite a bit of progress on understanding student success. It's an ongoing job, and we need to keep doing so and keep doing better. I think the former, understanding young scientists' hurdles to successful careers is something that needs much more attention, especially when it comes to women in science and early career women in science. There are excellent programs at WITS, CARTA, Early Career Academic Development Program, Next Generation of African Scholars Program, but when we learn from them, we don't operationalize this learning. So we've got these pockets of excellence, understanding how to develop young scholars successfully. But that is not 5 minutes. Thank you. 2 slides left. So for example, feedback from our program shows that one of the benefits of mentoring, specifically on navigating complex international funding consortia, has been tremendously helpful. Those scientists typically end up as what I referred to previously as the African compliance tick box on large European African grants. And this is a difficult thing to navigate as an early career scientist speaking to some high impact person from Europe. We do have examples of where we got this right. Around about 2006-2007, there was an externally funded leadership and management training provided to a selected cohort. This has been enormously impactful. I don't know everyone in that particular cohort, but I do know that people like Professor Roger Gibson, Professor Neville Pillay, Professor Mary Scholes have played important and impactful leading roles subsequent to that training in this university. Why are we not doing that again? Where do we start? Remember, it's a start, it's not the solution. Recognition. Simple, but public recognition of a job well done does not happen enough at WITS. It needs to be more explicit, it needs to be more thoughtful, and we need to do it not just for collegiality, but also to respond to the current trends in the job market. Talent management of early career researchers is a key part of transformation. I recognize and support the WITS transformation policy, but I think it can be much more impactful when coupled with a longer-term strategy on developing and enabling early career staff. We need to attract, retain, nurture, develop, and we need to do so much of it that we even export some of this talent. Our talent is recognized, but at the moment it's being poached, and we are not better off afterwards. Right. So this is how I see the linkages. Talent management done well supports excellence, and excellence-driven scientists and support staff result in low operational friction as they perform better, enjoy work, and seek ways to improve processes, thereby supporting the faculty's contribution to the national project and setting the international agenda. Simple pathway to impact. Entry point, things to do, complicated, but not undoable, with an outcome. Wrapping up. Work in the gaps, look over the fence, balance and grow. Take home messages. Put more eloquently, the collective capability to strategically nurture and navigate interdisciplinary spaces, these spaces are in academia, industry and society, with innovative talent management for staff and students, will consolidate and expand the faculty's ability to respond to national imperatives and at the same time be an agenda-setting leader on the world stage. I look forward to working with faculty staff to inform and flesh out these big picture ideas. I conclude with the last paragraph of my statement of intent document. I bring proven expertise to put financial and administrative resources in place to execute a shared vision. I've done so in innovative ways for the Global Change Institute, bringing new resources to old challenges, and if you give me the opportunity, I'll do so again for the Faculty of Science. Thank you very much.
Okay, colleagues, thank you firstly, Byron, for the presentation and for staying in time. Colleagues, are there any questions?
Can you please tell us something about your views of how you would improve the quality of teaching and the effectiveness of student learning? You say we're doing well on student success, but only about 1/3 of our students are completing on time. So how would you go about trying to improve the quality of teaching and student learning?
I'll take three questions, and then you can answer. Second one.
Prof. Rasmus, I just want to know how you're going to strategize to handle declining NRF revenues, essentially, for our research budgets.
Transformation is an important issue, and you didn't address it in your talk. Maybe if you could tell us what your vision is for transforming the Faculty of Science.
Okay, Mark. Take the first one.
Thank you very much. I think the first point in improving teaching and learning at WITS is that we have recognized there's a problem. I think we've come, since my experience of first year teaching in 2003, I think we've come a long way in recognizing the needs and the ways in which our students learn. I think we've come a long way in trying to make our content more relevant. And part of that process of making the content more relevant is some early discussions around decolonizing the curriculum. So I think those are things that we've done well. I think we need to do more of those things in the same way. We need to think about where is the expertise to improve the teaching capacity. So I'm aware of ways in which we get feedback for lecturers and professors for different courses that I've taught. But I think that loop from the feedback and that assessment process back into the practice of teaching and back into the practice of how professors interact with students, I think that is a loop that we can definitely close much better than we're doing at the moment.
Second one.
Second question is around the declining NRF budgets. I don't think it's just the NRF budgets. I think this is a much larger funding crisis for the entire higher education sector. So WITS has got some high-level strategic initiatives to increase more funding. I think you may have heard of the Centenary campaign. One of the ways to do that would be to address some of the shortfall is to align closely with the Centenary campaign. At the Global Change Institute, I have been doing it. But I think the perception of business, this is from my personal discussions with business leaders, is that the NSFAS funding that came out of the Fees Must Fall movement and the entire process thereafter, the business perception is that, oh, the problem's solved. Students now have funding, they can go. Where should we put our money? And there's an opportunity to get the message across that, hang on guys, that's only half the human capacity development pipeline. Or possibly even the rest of it is postgrad studies. So there's a mind shift that has happened, which we're not capitalizing on, and saying we need it for postgrad studies, and we can even start linking, say, the sorts of problems we face need postgrad studies. I have some experience to do this in business, and as a new dean, I don't lose those contacts. It just means that I start leveraging those contacts for faculty-type programs as opposed to making the GCI survive on soft money. So. Third question is around my views on transformation. I think the WITS statement on transformation is quite a nuanced one. It talks about proportional representation, but it also talks about the diversity of ideas. It talks about the diversity of knowledge systems. And I think that as a collective fits quite well with what I've proposed around collegiality. I am really passionate about the last bit that I mentioned, that a transformation policy only focused at what I think of end of human resources pipeline representation. It's important, it's part of what we do. But that process, without a considered early career development program with excellence and access as primary goals, will in the long run not give us the transformation that we need. We also need, I did mention balance. There's a certain time lag with the one process, and there's a more shorter term response with the former process. And it's up to us to balance that in a way that brings about the necessary transformation in this university.
Spora, just following on from your transformation talk, what about transformation in teaching and transformative pedagogies? Could you comment on that, please?
My experience in transformation,
Hi, regarding the pipeline, especially on the postgraduate side, how do you propose to address the specific issue of the fact that students from disadvantaged backgrounds feel a lot of pressure to sort of immediately go into jobs that can pay and not make their way through the academic pipeline?
third question? If there's no third question, maybe we should take those two.
Thank you very much.
Call it out after that.
My experience of transformative pedagogies comes from my reading on how to develop interdisciplinary scholars in sustainability science. This rests on pillars. I think this is quite a bit well exemplified by the University of British Columbia's approach to using sustainability as a transformative pedagogic framework. So instead of defining sustainability narrow in terms of what are you doing to reach the Sustainable Development Goals, it recognizes that you need systems competencies, it recognizes that you need holistic thinking, it recognizes you need some humility, and it recognizes that you do need some basic knowledge about resources and people and who uses what on earth. What they have done, and I think this is a good example again of transformative pedagogies, is to provide a set of practicals, a set of courses, and mix and match agile course material that researchers can use or lecturers can use in different ways and in different places in their practicals with as much penetration in the course as they are comfortable with. Over time, I think this is a project that's been going for about 10 or 12 years, over time, this has shown to be enormously impactful. I do have to say that that particular strategy around transformative pedagogy is also in the context of a university with a world-leading sustainability strategy. And that is probably part of the success in coursework and undergrad teaching, but I do think there's a nugget of learning in there for us.
Thank you.
Next question is around pipelines and disadvantaged students. I find myself using the term human capacity development pipeline, but it's not a pipe. It really isn't. I think we seldom plan our careers beyond the next 5 years. I don't know if you guys have got 10-year plans or not. Certainly for me, there's a 3-month plan, and there's a 1-year plan, and there's a 3-month, I hope to get there. And some actions in between, and you revise this as you go along. So I think it's about understanding what are the decision points for these disadvantaged students. There are structural impediments for them that we don't necessarily understand to their fullest extent. So where they get in their career, and there's key periods, am I doing an honors, am I doing a master's, or do I become a deputy director in Department of Science Innovation? When they make those decisions, they need to have access to mentors, and they need to have access to trusted partners in academia to give good advice, not prescriptive advice, but good advice, and understand that in addition to having a job, there's also such a thing as having a career. I would like to think that most of us prioritize careers and career satisfaction. If we did not do that, there are other places than academia where we can make a living. And that is one of the messages which I think we could convey much better. And it feeds into what I mentioned earlier around the mentorship program and how you need a trusted advisor, you need a trusted person to guide early career scientists through this maze.
Thank you. Colleagues, there's time for one more burning question if you have one. If not, then I'd like to thank Baron for that presentation. I'd like us to just acknowledge Baron. We will see you just after 4 today.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
You'll fix this again for the next person.
Yes. colleagues, whilst we are waiting Professor Duncan's arrival, a faculty is on the way. You're welcome to take a couple of breaks. So we're going to start at 10 to promptly. Thank you.
What do you enjoy? The team
We would like to welcome Professor Francis Duncan to do the presentation. Francis, you have 20 minutes for the presentation. After 15 minutes, I will just indicate you have 5 minutes left. So welcome, and I just want to formally introduce you. Francis is currently the head of school of the School of Animal Plant and Environmental Sciences at WITS. She has held various positions previously since her employment at the university in 2003. And like I've said with the previous candidate, she also has a PhD in zoology, which she completed here at the University of Witwatersrand. So welcome, Francis, and we look forward to your presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Professor Krant. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, colleagues, students, and all of those on live streaming. I must admit, I think this is the first time I've been live streamed. So as you know, I've been asked to talk on how we build a nationally responsive and world-class Faculty of Science. Thank you, Professor Krant, for the introduction. I just want to let you know a bit more about me. I'm an entomologist. I've worked on insects. These are just some of the insects that I've worked on. And my recent PhD graduate is up there on the top right, and he worked on edible insects. I do have a C1 rating from the NRF. And just recently, I was made an honorary life member of the Entomological Society of Southern Africa for my contribution to entomology within South Africa and internationally. Until Wednesday, I was head of school of the School of Animal Plant and Environmental Sciences, and I'm very pleased to say I've left the school on a very good footing. The latest Shanghai Index has shown that there's an increase of prominence in the research in the life and biological sciences. Right, so to get on to the talk and to get on to the faculty, this is what you get to when you get to the Faculty of Science webpage, which has, of course, our mission statement. Right, and as you all know, the Faculty of Science teaches everything from astrophysics all the way to zoology and almost anything else you could think of in between. But are we missing something? Is there something more that we could do? What could we do to address the needs of the country and make us world class? So I've divided my talk into 4 sections. These are following, and these are the 4 main sections that I would like to actually deal with. All right, let's start with the strategic plan. Where are we going as a faculty? Do we actually have a strategic plan? When I took over as head of the School of Animal Plant and Environmental Sciences, I started within 4 months. We had the strategic planning session. It was actually really useful, because not only did it provide me as the head of school with a plan to go forward for the next 5 years, it also created a collegial atmosphere. People felt that they were involved, and they were involved in defining the plan. As part of that day, because the school has a significant proportion of support staff, the support staff were invited for lunch. And it meant that people interacted and got to know each other. Now, within the Faculty of Sciences, you know, there are 5 new heads of schools recently appointed. Well, 1 is still to be appointed, the School of Geography and Archaeological Sciences. So I think it would be a great idea if we had a strategic plan, and then particularly for the heads of schools to get to know each other. As a head of school, I know what it's like when you're given directions from the senior executive team and you have to implement it in your school. So we need, as a whole, to have a vision for the faculty. And are we meeting with The council objectives: training our graduates for the future, for future jobs. For 2 years, I served as an academic representative on council, so I have got some insight on how council interacts with the university management. So, what are the needs of the country? All of this you all know about. Big data. Here are some students winning a supercomputing competition, BITS and UCT students. Quantum computing. There we go. Professor Vilakazi was there unveiling the IBM quantum computer at the Shumaling precinct. Isn't it time we went and visited that place and saw what it was like? Get our science students innovative. For IR, that's been branded about much better in the press and elsewhere. And here is our president and our VC at the 4IR SA Digital Summit. Should the faculty be involved? And of course, global climate change, which you know is going to be on the front page of the Mail and Guardian this week and being monitored. It's in the news with the politicians, very prominent. So, what are we missing? What in the faculty would set us apart from the others? One of the things I noticed is the need, possibly, for interdisciplinary degrees. We do interdisciplinary research. Research is getting more and more interdisciplinary, as you saw from those areas that I looked at. What about an interdisciplinary degree? If we look around the university, there's been a huge success with the digital arts, training future gamers, making future games in the computer or in the gaming industry, which is getting bigger and bigger. BITS was the first to market astrophysics. That's the picture of the black hole, for those of you who don't know. Marketing astrophysics, surely we should market it more. We were the first to develop it. UCT followed soon after. Did you know that the top science students in 2017 and 2018 both came from the degree of astrophysics and were both female? Did we advertise this? Were we proud of our successes? I think this needs to be done. Right, so I've got some ideas for some interdisciplinary degrees. What about looking at computer science and applied mathematics, linking with electrical and information engineering? Could we set up a degree in big data and quantum computing? Would physics be necessary into this mix? Just some ideas. Closer to what I know about, ecology and conservation is a major within the School of Animal, Plant and Environmental Sciences. But recently, as several of you are aware, we are not going to conserve our natural resources unless we keep the rural communities, the communities around those resources, also interested in conserving. So we need social sciences. What about economics and law? Would all of this address issues of environmental law, which are going to, we need to train more environmental lawyers? This is going to be a new big career. What about national parks management, tourism? And putting them all together, we could have something really interesting. This could link into more research ideas, could link into degrees which would train people for a job that they can actually see. I can go out there and work in this environment. So this is a list of issues that I think an interdisciplinary degree would actually address. We could make it student-centered. Get the students involved. It's a new degree. We could start with that. We could, I've called it a professional degree. I don't really like that term. But you know we're losing some of our top students to the Faculty of Health Sciences and the Faculty of Engineering and the Built Environment due to the fact that several of our students, or most of our students, I think, are still first-generation students. They cannot explain to their parents what a BSc degree actually gives to them. Parents don't understand They know what a doctor does. They know what an engineer does. They don't know what a scientist does. But a scientist can go into any career. Let's make a few career directions for our students so they can actually take the science option. Breakdown of silos. Let's try and do more collaboration. So we're faculty, we've got 9 schools, we're over 2 campuses. It's hard for us to get together. Let's try and do further collaboration. And as I said, funding opportunities may arise from this, and we may be training, and we hopefully are training our students for the new job market. What does the faculty currently offer? There is links with engineering, but to me it seems to be more that the students can decide to actually end up in science or in engineering. The interdisciplinary degree is the MSc in Environmental Sciences and in Global Change, which is offered by the School of Animal Plant, well, administered by the School of Animal Plant and Environmental Sciences, and that is properly interdisciplinary. So I have experience of trying to sort out an interdisciplinary degree and knowing the pitfalls and the problems of getting faculties to actually work together. And there is one, an e-science within computer science and applied mathematics. So to go on to the academic plan, where we have challenges. And we all know what those challenges are. I have picked out 3 which I feel are important for us to deal with as a faculty. So if we start with the massification of education, I think as a faculty, we are actually trying to investigate this and to deal with the increase in undergraduate student numbers, the increase in students being less prepared for universities, and students being lonely on campus. And Professor Liz Brenner started the Science Student Success Center, and I would like, should I get the position, I would like to grow on that, because that is really helping our science students, both emotionally and with their writing abilities. Professor Anne Cameron runs the Science Teaching and Learning Center, which helps lecturers with their lectures. Many of you in this room will have had Anne sitting in your lectures and giving you useful advice. We need to grow on that, and should the learning management system change from Sakai to another platform, I think we'd need a person who could actually assist the science lecturers in their particular way in the center as well. Another issue which I know we've been grappling with is face-to-face tuition. We're a face-to-face tuition university. I know we've got some courses online, but most of our courses are like this, talking to each other. Our students struggle in a big lecture theatre. Do we need more tutors? From my experience in teaching a course which students have found difficult, I've had a student sit in my office, and it's taken us half an hour for me to understand what the student doesn't know. The student didn't know the right questions to ask. And it would be no good putting them in a video saying, well, yes, this is how the insect breathes. Let me show you from the video. It was actually planning out and finding the physics behind it that they didn't actually understand. So do we as a faculty need to find a way of getting more tutors into our classes to assist those students? Right. These are the figures which the Assistant Dean of Postgraduate Affairs presented at the last faculty exec. And as you can see, as a faculty, we're doing very well. And our graduates are getting jobs both nationally and internationally. But can we keep this up? Those heads of schools who haven't done their budget meetings will have still got the shock to be told how many postgraduate students they should be enrolling for next year. What are the challenges? We've been grappling with the NRF bursaries. The NRF doesn't have sufficient funds. Where are we going to recover? Where are we going to get money for student postgraduate bursaries? And within that, there was an item about marking or giving a point score to an MSc thesis. if the NRF are going to insist that we mark our MSc theses so that the student who wrote the thesis gets high enough points to be eligible for a PhD bursary, we are then going to be marking the student because we want the student to get the bursary rather than actually looking at the quality of the thesis. This is a slippery slope. And recently, I know Professor Francesca Perini was at the Department of Higher Education. They are reviewing the PhD theses. I think we need to be aware of it. We need to be involved in this review. We need to make sure that what we as a faculty feel is a good PhD thesis is still out there. We have got a world-class reputation. We don't want to lose it by sending our students with poor PhDs. But for the research outputs, I just used journal publication units because I know that the School of Geography and Archaeology have been doing books, but the publication units changed during this time frame. As you can see, we were on a steady way to increase in 2016, and now we have stagnated, or we seem to have come to a plateau. I think we need to interrogate what this plateau is. Is it because we're doing more interdisciplinary collaborations? We all know the physicists have like 200 to 300 people on their papers, but the ecologists are starting to have 10 to 20 people on their papers too. And this is because science is getting more interdisciplinary. We are doing more collaboration. The collaborators are worldwide. So let's interrogate this and see what it is. It may not necessarily be that people are publishing less. Maybe we need to have a look at what is happening. Maybe also the newer academics need some support to encourage them to publish more. Right, transformation. This is a problem which is affecting all the universities in South Africa, and it's necessary for us to transform. There's a recent book out, Black Academic Voices. Copies will be available soon in the Water Wilder Library. And one of the authors is Hugo Kenner. Now, he is no stranger to the Faculty of Science because he's been helping us with our staffing and promotions meetings. And my suggestion would be to ask Hugo Kenner to come and actually talk to us as a faculty to tell us why there's this perception that there's no place for black academics on the university campuses. But we also need to not only have the conversation, we need to listen to what we've been told. As a female in science, I've always been in a male-dominated field. And so I've got experience of people, of my line managers, some of my colleagues, who will say to me, oh, we know what's wrong with you females. This is why you're not succeeding. And they're not listening. We need to listen. We need to be careful of patriarchy. This is a quote from Dr. Graham, who got an honorary doctorate from BITS in March 2017. We also have to celebrate our diversity. And diversity is not a numbers exercise, having numbers of this race or numbers of this gender. It's having a really diverse staff and students within the Faculty of Science and celebrating it. And making everybody feel comfortable and part of the faculty. Right, financial plan. We need to be financially stable because otherwise the universities will collapse. And for this, and this has come as a director of council. I was on the FinCo, which is the Financial Board for Council, for 2 years. So I've seen the university finances from the very broad perspective right to the level of the school. Before then, as within the School of Animal Plant and Environmental Sciences, when I took over, the operations budget was overspent on a regular basis. I managed to reduce the spending, make sure it was strategic, and get the fraud also out of the school. Right, so we've got infrastructure and funding for research and postgraduate students, which are important financial objectives. Infrastructure is creating world-class facilities. I was instrumental in creating the greenhouse and the bits and secretary, which are now increasing the research output within the school and allowing individuals to do better research or more global research. For funding, we need to involve alumni. The school turned 100 in 2017, but older than the university. We had great functions, we incorporated the alumni. Unfortunately, the school's alumni are not wealthy, but another benefit of keeping the alumni with us is to save our universities. Our universities are under sort of stress from the outside. We are being told what to do. We do not want to end up as teaching colleges. So we need our alumni to actually support us so that we can be a research-intensive university. So let's have some alumni functions. And maybe the interdisciplinary programs will also give us some external funding. So, as you come in through the OLS gateway, you enter into the science precinct. Science stretches across East Campus, you go into West Campus, and there's the rest of the Faculty of Science on West Campus. My management style is open. I'm willing to hear about suggestions, but I'm also able to make hard decisions, as I've had to as head of school in deciding which programs we've had to discontinue because they weren't successful. It was our marine and coastal field trip, and fortunately I've managed to be able to bring it back. So, should I be given the position, I would like to create a stable, collegial, and enabling environment for the 9 schools of the faculty to be able to be nationally responsive and be world class. Thank you.
Thank you, Francis. Are you going to ask questions from there or from where you are?
From where I am.
Colleagues, we thank Francis for that presentation, and the floor is now open for questions. I'll take one round of questions, 3 questions at a time. So who wants to go first? One again.
Thank you, Professor. I'd just like to ask, I know it's our goal to become, research-intensive university, but what would you suggest to do that we can actually achieve that when we have such a huge increase in undergraduate numbers and very little increase in the number of staff?
Second one.
Thank you very, very much. That was really very warm and very interesting. I just wanted to ask, increasingly now with interdisciplinarity and even transdisciplinarity, the whole mantra coming globally and both locally is doing science with society rather than for society. I wondered if you could just comment on that.
Thank you very much for the excellent presentation, and I'm very happy that you are a PhD and you understand the system very well. So the question that many of us have is about certain kind of practical issues. What we expect from a dean of the faculty. I'm a member of the Faculty Research Committee, and many times certain kind of directives come from above, from the SEC. They are very competent people. We have a Vice Chancellor that is extremely outspoken and well-spoken, and it's very hard to argue with him. But sometimes these directives come as if we have to just endorse them, and it's not the opposite. It doesn't actually, there is no process that the basis, us that we do the research, actually can approach through our team the set and actually be part of very serious decisions. There have been decisions in the high level of the university management which have affected us positively but negatively as well. And we had no voice there. The perception that the dean, what the dean's position is, has become more and more a position of a translator of the directives that they are coming from above to the bottom. We would like to see a dean that is dynamic, strong enough to argue with Adam Habib. And I would like you to elaborate on that role. How you perceive your role on actually bringing us, the basis, the people that do the work, into the set.
Thank you. So, will you take those 3 questions, Francis?
Yes, thank you. Research intensive, and we're doing more teaching and less staff. Yes, this is an ongoing discussion, and it is a huge problem because we do need to do research, and all of us sitting here in the faculty want to do research. We want to get research out, and we also want to train students because that's why we're here. One of the things I think possibly we could look at our program offering, see if we could actually possibly reduce the number of courses. I don't know if this is all possible. It would have to be done on a school-by-school level so that we could free up some staff. I know within the School of Plant and Environmental Sciences, I'm always trying to free up at least a block for every staff member so they would have some time where they could concentrate on research. Of course, it wasn't completely free for research because it was still marking and seeing students, but it was a way of doing it. So we need to come up with some suggestions. Colleen, your talk about science with people, yes, I think that would be a good approach. It is happening. Citizen science we're using. And I think we do need to incorporate the public. There's a whole perception that universities are such elitist organizations and possibly doing science with people would actually break down that barrier. Because the universities are here to serve the country. But we don't want to serve it without doing the big science. And it is a problem. As a head of school, it happens that you go to a meeting with the dean and they say, you need to increase honours numbers to 55, you need to increase your PhD intake to this much, and you can speak to all the previous deans. I've never gone out of there without fighting for my school. And also a faculty exec, I haven't been quiet when it's been necessary. Yes, I do know Adam Habib, and I have spoken up at council when I felt that the requirements or that the academic staff were being left behind. So, yes, if I do become dean, I will be fighting for the faculty.
Thank you. We have another round of questions.
So you mentioned 2 really excellent initiatives in terms of the Centre for Student Success and the Centre for Teaching and Learning. But within your faculty, as you know, there are particular courses that have persistently high failure rates or failure numbers of students. So how would you deal with those heads of schools and those courses?
Well, thank you for the talk. I learned quite a few things about the science faculty that I didn't know. And now I have a question for the future. How will the science faculty address the university's language policy?
One last question for this round. If not, can you take those 2, please? High failure rates in some courses. Science faculty is approached.
I know that there's high failure rate in some courses, and the science faculty has been working particularly on some of the mathematics courses. my approach would be to go to the heads of schools where those courses are and actually chat to them and try and work out what we could do to manage it, see where the problems are. And this is where I'd like to incorporate tutors, and we're finding funding so we can employ some tutors, something to help the students get guidance. It is a problem in that, and this is where I think we've got too many undergraduate students and they are ill-equipped for university. Not only, some of them not only educationally wise, but just emotionally wise. It is really daunting, I think, to come into Bramford when you come from Limpopo. So yes, I think we'd have to unpack what's causing the failure, what the courses are, possibly to go into the lectures, discuss with the lecturers, change the way they're lecturing, sort of actually deal with it. But I think more group tutoring would actually help. Within the school, especially in the first year biology courses, we instigated tutor groups, and that seems to have worked. Where students come and work as a group in a tutorial. I know it's only 45 minutes, so it's not very long, under the guidance of a tutor. And maybe more of that needs to be done. I'm not sure where we're going to find the time for these students to do that. So we'll have to look into that. Sigrid, yes, the language policy is something which is there, but I think the Faculty of Science could actually be more innovative in the language policy. Sigrid, you've told me about how you've done computers and language and looking at computers to try and look at some of our official languages, possibly use computers for translating, not like Google Translate, but in a more scientific way. Another idea that I've spoken to other people about is that everybody's talking about global climate change, but within most of our official languages, there's no language for that. There are no words, there's no terminology. Surely we as a faculty could get down and work out this terminology, link with the linguistics, and go to if it's language school, and find somebody, and the scientist and the language expert could sit together. I think if we could create a vocabulary which would be in, let's say, the two languages that we decide on, isiZulu and Sesotho, this could then go out to the greater population and they would understand about global climate change instead of having a vague understanding. It could then go to the schools. If people hear about big, important issues in their mother tongue, they may actually take them on board. And this is where I think we could feed in as a faculty into the language policy.
Thank you. Colleagues, one last question. One last question.
Okay. In the U.S., when we elect a new president, as hopefully will happen soon, there's a talk about the first 100 days of the presidency being critically important in establishing the agenda. And it wasn't, obviously there's lots of challenges facing the position. Could you give me an idea of sort of what your top 3 priorities would be in those first 100 days in office as the...
My top priority would be actually go to visit each of the 9 schools. I would like to also get the heads of schools together so we could actually chat about the Faculty of Science and then have a strategic planning session, probably with the faculty exec. But I would like to get the heads of schools to actually be chatting to each other. As a head of school, it can be sometimes really lonely. And it's nice to know that others are feeling the same way and find out what the more experienced heads are actually doing, and to find out what are the problems within the schools, because it's the schools which are the faculty.
Thank you, Francis, for the presentation and for answering the questions so frankly. I'd like us to just acknowledge Francis' contribution. Thank you very much. So we will be seeing you later this afternoon. Thank you. Just whilst awaiting the next candidate, which will be in about 5 minutes, so we'll allow him to set up. And again, if you have an urgent need for a counter press, now's the time.
What she said. That's exactly what I want to do. Okay, so we're talking.
No, we have to do it. It's a good idea, and we have to have lunch and
yeah, we have to have
very lunch and
clear our lunch.
we have to have it. Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
She's doing okay. Yeah, no, she's doing very good.